All right. You'll have to unmute your mic and then you can go on.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a todos. Thank you all for joining us today in this outreach meeting for the Salton Sea North Lake Pilot Demonstration Project. My name is Juan Perez. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Riverside County, and it is my pleasure to serve as your moderator today. Today, you will be hearing from several elected officials and staff that are leading the way to move this important project forward. The North Lake Demonstration Project will be the first of what we expect to be many individual construction projects in Riverside County that together will lead to meaningful progress in the restoration of the Salton Sea. To get us to this point today, and as we launch this initial demonstration project, it has taken a concerted effort of state, county, and regional leaders and partners working together through the Salton Sea Authority. You will be hearing from them today, as well as seeing a presentation from county staff providing more information on this project. Before we get to the speakers, I want to remind all participants of some ground rules that will help us conduct a successful meeting and assure that we can hear from as many members of the public as possible. First, I want to note that this meeting is being translated in Spanish, so we encourage our Spanish listeners to access the link that has been provided for the Spanish feed, and the link can be found at the county Salton Sea website. You may hear pauses from our speakers along the way to allow time for the translation to catch up. After the speakers, we will move to a section on community input. This will be an opportunity to take questions from the audience that will be answered by our speaker panelists, as well as hear your input and comments on the project. We encourage speakers to submit questions through the chat box, which can then be referred to the panelist, and written questions submitted through the chat box in English or in Spanish will be answered first. After the questions from the chat box are answered, we will then proceed to take speakers that are on Zoom. Please use the raise hand feature, and you will be unmuted by our technical team when it is your turn. We ask, please, that all of our speakers keep their questions or comments to 3 minutes or less. This will allow us to take as many questions and comments as possible. Thank you in advance for your cooperation and courtesy, which will allow other members of the public an opportunity to speak as well. I will go over the instructions for the community input section once again, once we get to that point. But for now, we want to go ahead and start our meeting today. And I do so, it's my great pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, who is leading the charge on behalf of Riverside County, Supervisor Manuel Perez. Supervisor.
Thank you, Juan, for your introductory remarks and for setting the stage. I appreciate it, and thank you all that's joining in our first committee meeting that, quite frankly, I wish would be in our community of North Shore or around the Salton Sea, but due to COVID and just making sure that we take every precautionary action that's necessary to keep people safe, we decided to have our first meeting as a Zoom meeting. But nonetheless, though, we hope that people participate, engage, and let their voices be heard. And I am County Supervisor Victor Manuel Perez, and I'm very proud of the fact that we've gotten to this point where potentially we have a project known as the North Lake Pilot Demonstration Project that you will hear from others today and what it means and how potentially it would move us forward with the perimeter lake concept, with projects around desert shores, with ensuring that ultimately we also improve the lithium efforts and what's going on in the south end of the Salton Sea, and quite frankly, even the longer term idea of water importation. But before we even get to that space, we need to demonstrate to the federal government and to others that we can take on this task. And that's why we are calling this a pilot demonstration project. And it gives me great pleasure to say that over the course of years, I remember when I was on the state legislature and I would stand up on the assembly floor to discuss the Salton Sea. I remember the days where people didn't know what the Salton Sea was. They didn't have a clue, or they quite frankly didn't care if they knew anything about the Salton Sea. But because of collaborative efforts, coordination with grassroots organizations and local nonprofits, as well as local leadership, regional leadership, state leadership, and as well at the federal level, we have been making some major strides. And it really requires all of us to move and to advance our work to get to this space and to get us further and beyond. And I would say too that as a result of working with other elected leaders, for example, our Speaker, Anthony Rendon, or Senator Ben Wessel, or even Governor Newsom, as a result of that, there seems to be much more of a synchronized effort. And you'll hear about that a little bit more later when you hear from our Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, and then as well from our Coachella Valley Water District Board Director, Castelo Estrada. I also like to acknowledge the fact that Wade Crowfoot has been helping and leading the charge. He's not able to join us today, but there are members of his agency, as well as the Department of Water Resources, as well as the Department of Fish and Wildlife, that are joining us to hear us out, to hear you out, and to incorporate, to integrate your concepts, your ideas into this North Lake Perimeter Project. Mind you, this is a project in which we finally received investment of up to $20 million. And most of the investment from the bond monies went to the south end of the sea. However, through advocacy and through knocking on doors and through making sure that we made visits up in Sacramento, we were able to receive these dollars to move us forward in advancing this project. And mind you, this is also linked to the 10-year Salton Sea management plan, which is very important for me to state that, because without this being integrated into the 10-year management plan, this project would not be where it is today. And so my hope as your supervisor and now president of the Salton Sea Authority, working alongside my colleagues, Torres Martinez, the rest of Riverside County, CVWD, IID, and the County of Imperial, as well as many others. My hope is that we can bring this project to fruition, but once again, ensure that the projects at the south end of the sea, the project at Desert Shores, the perimeter lake concept, the water importation efforts, it's all part of the play. It's all part of the plan. And working together, we can make that happen and bring all those projects to fruition. And so now it gives me great honor to introduce our good friend who has taken on the reins of ensuring that we fulfill the Salton Sea Management Plan, and not only through policy, but as well ensuring that we receive the funding that's necessary to begin this project and many others, is our great champion for the Salton Sea, and that's State Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, who also came out on CBS doing a national news story on the Salton Sea to bring national attention to the people across the country. And after that, you'll hear from, as well, Director Castelo Estrada. Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, do you happen to be on?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Supervisor, for that introduction and giving us a little bit of some context in terms of where we're at and what today's conversation will be about. I'm going to address the many who are on today in Spanish, and I'm going to address them given that as I kind of comb through or go through the screen, I see a lot of, public community residents. And so I wanted to say a few words in Spanish and then transition back to English. Muy buenas tardes. Soy su asambleísta Eduardo García. Es un placer estar aquí con ustedes hoy. Mis comentarios van a ser breves. Esta tarde tenemos la oportunidad de iniciar una serie de juntas en donde nos ponemos a enfocar específicamente en el proyecto de North Shore, que viene siendo un proyecto piloto que platica y nos dice el supervisor que en colaboración con muchas otras agencias se está tomando a cabo. Creo que lo más importante de hoy es mirar que esta es la primera de muchas juntas que se tomarán a cabo para poder darnos su sugerencia, su idea y su preocupación sobre el tema del Salton Sea y los proyectos que vienen hacia adelante. Para nosotros es de gran importancia escuchar por parte de ustedes, no solo con este tema, sino muchos otros temas que nos perjudican en el este del Valle de Coachella, que están relacionados al Salton Sea, sea el tema del litio, sea el tema de la salud pública, o sea específicamente el tema de este proyecto. Nosotros estamos comprometidos a escucharlos y a escucharlos en una manera en donde podamos integrar sus preocupaciones, ideas, sugerencias como prioridad para cumplir con el trabajo que está hacia adelante. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos esta tarde. Just wanted to say that, this work is the first meeting of several. And we know how important this community input is, not just to this issue, but to the issues surrounding the Salton Sea, whether it be the conversation around lithium, conversation around the public health implications that are taking place out there. We know that the community is hungry to be involved in the housing conversations as well. All the issues that are pertinent to the East Coachella Valley, we want to get some input. And this is the first of many so that we can hear ideas, suggestions, what are the worries? What are the things that people want to see integrated into this effort? As you mentioned, Supervisor, there has been a lot of progress that has been made in terms of aligning community, government at all levels, and some funding to be able to begin executing some of these projects. You mentioned $220+ million of work underway already on the southwest part of the Salton Sea. Most people still don't know that that project is under construction. This project could be the first where people will see, be able to go down there and feel and directly see the benefits of a pilot project like this come to the community. So this is why this conversation and the many to come are so important. Count on us, count on me, my team here locally and in Sacramento to continue to be a force when it comes to the advocacy that we will need to continue to receive the support from the state agencies and the funding from the state agencies that we need moving forward. The state has put forward somewhere within the range of about $500 million to execute on projects. We need to get those projects ready and start drawing down that money. And we need to also ask the federal government to step up and step in when it comes to matching those efforts and allowing us to execute these very important projects that are related to the Salton Sea Management Plan. With that, I just want to say thank you for bringing us together. And it's, again, the first of many conversations where the community gets to voice their opinions on what they want to see happen here. So thank you for inviting us. We will be here on standby, as will our team, taking notes and seeing what role we play in all this moving forward. But thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Garcia and Supervisor Perez, for helping us set the stage and for your leadership and advocacy to get us to this point. I also do want to remind our Spanish speakers that we do have a live Spanish translation going on through the feed at the website. So I encourage any of you that would like to access that to do so as well. Now it's my pleasure to introduce another key partner in this effort, and that is through his work at both the Coachella Valley Water District, where he serves as vice president, as well as his membership and his leadership at the Salton Sea Authority. It's my pleasure to introduce Director Castulo Estrada. Director Estrada?
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Can you hear me? Just fine? Okay, well, I want to thank Supervisor Perez for his comments and certainly our Assembly member for his comments. I think they've both played a key role over the years to ensure that we address the issues around the Salton Sea. I think they covered a lot of what I was going to say, but you know, when I think about this project, and certainly there's a lot of other projects around the sea, but when I think about this project in particular, you know, it does take me back to thinking about all the efforts that have kind of happened, all the work that everybody's done to kind of get to this place today. As Supervisor Perez mentioned, we recognized some time ago that it was important for us to incorporate a project on the north end of the lake. And as we were having those conversations, you know, we obviously worked with our Assembly member to try to secure some funding for a project through Prop 68, which passed. And then we spent some time going to Sacramento to try to figure out how to get those $20 million out of Sacramento into a project. And as we put a budget breakdown for that project, as we created deliverables, certainly one of the deliverables that we agreed on as part of our agreement with the state was to engage in public outreach and public participation, and that's what we're doing now. With that, we're still in the process of trying to put the project together through design, securing of land, certainly a complicated project. But I think that if I want to emphasize something to all the participants here, all the member agencies, all the member agencies of the Salton Sea Authority, all the other agencies that are involved as part of this project in the community, is that, you know, by the title, you know, this is a pilot project. I think that it's a challenge to all of us to ensure that we find solutions to create the best project possible to show the state that we can come up with solutions, that we can implement projects. And I think if we do that, it would certainly put us in a much better position in the future as we continue to go to Sacramento and ask for more money to implement more projects around the perimeter of the Salton Sea. So I'm happy that we've gone this far. There's a lot more work to do, but I'm confident that as we continue to work together, we're going to put a project that we can be proud of. Certainly, that's my goal. I think Assemblymember Garcia said it. You know, this might be the first project where you're able to combine a bunch of different elements that creates public benefit. You know, something you can touch. A big lake with recreational opportunities centered around the community. Certainly, it's important for me that as we move forward, we create more projects like this that have a direct impact to existing communities. I know we're talking about another project in the West Shores. I think in similar in the aspect of the benefit that it would bring to community there. But you know, as other folks have said, count on us, count on the Coachella Valley Water District to continue to play a key role to ensure that this project is successful. And with that, I just want to thank all of you for being here, for participating, and certainly looking forward to hearing more about your input and the things that you would like to see be part of this project. And with that, I want to thank everybody.
Thank you, Director Estrada. Appreciate your comments and your leadership as well. It is my pleasure next to introduce the Executive Director of the Salton Sea Authority, and he'll talk a little bit more about the role of the Salton Sea Authority and the partnership that has been developed involving so many key stakeholders to move this project forward. So with that, my pleasure to introduce Patrick O'Dowd. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you, Juan. I appreciate that. Before I get started, I want to echo the comments that were made before me with respect to all of the efforts from all of the local elected public officials that allowed us to get here. This project has been long in coming, and this is an exciting day for me, and I'm sure for everybody in the community. As Juan mentioned, my name is Patrick O'Dowd, and I'm the Executive Director of the Salton Sea Authority, a joint powers agency formed in 1993 by the Coachella Valley Water District and the Imperial Irrigation District, along with Riverside and Imperial counties, joined a decade later by the Torres Martinez Desert Cahuilla Indians. These 5 agencies, represented on my board by 2 elected public officials from each, my 10 bosses, serve as elected representatives of every individual in the region. The authority was formed to address the historic and continuing changes at the sea and in the region, while preserving the sea's use for agricultural drainage purposes. Since its inception, and even much prior, a wide variety of studies have been conducted and numerous plans and projects had been proposed, but little to no visible work had begun. In 2003, an agreement was signed, the QSA, which resulted in the implementation of increased water conservation measures that, in turn, resulted in less water flowing to the sea. This conservation mindset had actually been setting in for some decades prior, and this agreement only accelerated the reduced flow to this and the increased impacts upon the sea. As a part of the QSA, the state agreed to take primary responsibility for those impacts associated with the increased conservation efforts, including the decline of the sea and the loss of habitat. But years had passed before any tangible work was initiated by the state to address those changes at the sea. As a result of local frustration and to create a framework for change, Assembly Bill number 71, authored by then Assemblymember and now Salton Sea Authority President Perez, who you heard from earlier, was signed into law on September 28, 2013. That law requires that the Secretary of California's Natural Resources Agency, in consultation and coordination with the Salton Sea Authority, to lead the restoration efforts. And while it's true that over the past 8 years, both the state and the authority have wrestled with the definition of terms like consultation, coordination, and restoration, it's precisely that close and maturing relationship between the authority and its member agencies, CVWD, Riverside County, IID, Imperial County, and the tribe, and the state by way of the Department of Natural Resources, Department of Water Resources, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, as well as our federal partners and others, got us to this point on this project today. Under the leadership of Salton Sea Authority President Castelo Estrada and others involved in the effort, including his successor, IID Director, then Salton Sea Authority President Alex Cardenas, we were able to secure the project funding under Proposition 68 for this project, as well as projects in Calexico and at the New River, and the Species Conservation Habitat Project in Imperial County, a $200+ million 4,000-acre habitat restoration project, which broke ground in December of 2020 and is far along in construction. Now, at the direction of Supervisor Perez, now Salton Sea Authority President, Riverside County has taken a strong leadership role in the implementing of this project. I'd like to now reintroduce Juan Perez, Chief Operating Officer for Riverside County, who, working with his team at the county and in close coordination with the authority team members and our partners at the state and others, has been at the tip of the spear in bringing this project to life. Juan.
Thank you, Patrick, for your comments and your leadership. And I'm going to turn it over here in a minute to Douglas Ordonez, who is our project manager for the county, to walk all of you through a presentation as to the work that's been done to date and the work moving forward that we're very excited to share with you. And I want to reiterate that under the leadership of Supervisor Perez, the county has really taken an active role to help deliver this first project on the ground. And through the partnerships that we've developed with the state of California and the Salton Sea Authority, it will be Riverside County that designs this project. It will be Riverside County that puts it out to construction. And we look forward to working together with all of our partners. I want to very much acknowledge just a few more of those partners before I turn it over to Douglas, but as Assemblymember Garcia has been leading the effort at the state level, we've been very fortunate to have Secretary Wade Crowfoot as well with the Natural Resources Agency personally involved. Arturo Delgado, the Undersecretary, leading the charge for the Salton Sea. Yvonne Wilhoff and Vivian Mansou with the Department of Water Resources are key partners. And Mario Llamas, Deputy Director with the Natural Resources Agency, who I believe is available today as well as a panelist. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Douglas to share with you where we're at today on this project and steps moving forward. Thank you, Douglas.
Good afternoon. I'm Douglas Ordonez Jr., Executive Office of the County of Riverside. My purpose today is to inform the community with an update of the North Lake Pilot Demonstration Project. You're probably asking yourself, what is the North Lake Pilot Demonstration Project? It is the construction of approximately 156-acre lake at the north end of the Salton Sea. Our goal is to create a shallow and deep water habitat for fish and birds while providing an opportunity to stimulate the local economy and create recreational opportunities. The project is expected to be linked into a larger North Lake in the future. This project is being funded by Proposition 68 with an allocation of $19.25 million. This project would not be possible without the assistance of all of our partner agencies who have played a vital role in the development of this project. Just give us a quick second. We're going to pull the presentation back up. All right. The state of California, specifically the Department of Water Resources, is serving as the grantor and will be providing the funding for this project through Proposition 68 that was approved by the voters in 2018. With the advocacy effort of Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, Governor Newsom approved the funding for the North Lake Demonstration Project in the state budget that was signed on June 2020. Next up is the Salton Sea Authority, who will be serving as the grantee for this project. The Salton Sea Authority consists of the County of Riverside, the Coachella Valley Water District, Imperial Irrigation District, Imperial County, and the Torres-Martinez Desert Cahuilla Indians. The grantee is responsible for the grant agreement administration, project coordination, and outreach community engagement, to name a few. This project is specifically within the County of Riverside. However, all of the partner agencies on the screen are actively working on other Salton Sea restoration-related projects. The County of Riverside is serving as the implementing agency for this project. With the leadership of Supervisor Perez, the Executive Office and the Transportation Land Management Agency will use its experience and expertise in capital project delivery to fulfill the completion of this project. Now I'd like to discuss our preferred location. The north end of the Salton Sea, located within Riverside County, consists of approximately 23 miles of shoreline. We asked Webb and Associates to identify potential site locations and conduct a high-level opportunity and constraint analysis report. The image on the left serves as a reference for the location of our project within the Salton Sea. The image on the right displays the 4 locations that were originally evaluated as part of the project analysis. Each location option was developed in conjunction with Riverside County and the Salton Sea Authority. At the completion of this analysis, Alternative 1, which is colored in blue, became the preferred location for this project. The proposed location will be approximately 156 acres located southeasterly of 72nd Avenue. Water supply strategies will consist of well, canal, and drain water, and approximately 2,000 acres of feet of water will be required per year. The image on the right is a conceptual drawing of our project. The team will be exploring various recreational opportunities at this location, and it will be connected to the North Shore Beach and Yacht Club. The footprint has 8 parcels with 4 property owners, and we intend to build 10 to 15 feet berms. This is a timeline of all the major events for this project. Starting at the top, April 2018, voters approved Proposition 68 on the ballot to provide funding for a variety of water projects, state and local parks, and wildlife conservation programs. June 2020, Governor Newsom approved the $19.25 million in funding for the North Lake demonstration project in the state budget. April 2021, the Department of Water Resources and the Salton Sea Authority signed the grant agreement that allowed the project planning to commence. June 2021, the project location analysis was completed and the site was selected. January 2022, the request for proposal for engineer and design of the project was released, and it is scheduled to close on February 9th. Which takes us to today, February 5th, 2022. We are holding our first community engagement meeting. The goal for our outreach plan is to build a structured, accessible, and meaningful process to communicate effectively. Partner agencies will work together in conducting project outreach and community engagement. Our efforts on the outreach side will consist of holding community meetings like today, consistent messaging on our social media pages, press releases, an interactive website, and an email where anyone can ask questions about the project. That concludes my presentation, and I would now like to walk you through our project website. This is our project website, starting at the very top. It can be found on the Riverside County main site. Anybody is able to access the website. We want to be able to give the public all the information and allow you to stay up to date. Starting at the top with the project description, a quick overview of the partner agencies, a copy of the agreements, and most importantly, the community engagement. So as you can see there, February 5th, 2022, the agenda is in English and in Spanish. And as soon as this meeting is over, we will be uploading today's recording in English and in Spanish for anyone to go back and view the video. Followed by the contact information. If you have any questions at any moment, feel free to email me. My email is listed on the site. And at the very bottom, we have conceptual renderings of our project. Now I'd like to pass it on to Juan Perez. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas, for the presentation. I want to talk a little bit more about our outreach efforts. As Douglas mentioned, all of our partners together are working to make sure that we have a comprehensive public outreach plan. As part of that, Douglas has introduced the website. We encourage folks to monitor that. We are very interested as well, if you would like to email Douglas through the information that he's posting, to establish a list of interested participants for any future meetings to make sure that we can cover outreach on that as much as possible. Supervisor, Assemblymember, and others mentioned that really this is the first of several meetings that we're going to be having on this project as we get into the next development stages and phases of it. So we welcome any and all input, and we ask you all to stay engaged as well, to be part of this conversation with us moving forward. We do hope that in the future we'll be able to actually be back out again in person for community meetings. I know it's a high priority for the supervisor and assembly member to be able to do that as well. So we will look to schedule opportunities for in-person meetings as soon as we can. With that, I want to go ahead and transition the meeting to the community input portion of it, and want to once again just kind of go over a few of the ground rules to help us be able to do this as successfully as possible. We encourage questions submitted in either English or Spanish through the chat, and our technical team will compile a list of all questions and provide them to me, and I will ask our panelists to begin answering the questions. All of the panelists will be unmuted, I believe, so that'll give any of you an opportunity as well if you would like to add any comments to those of the prior speaker. After we take the questions from the chat box, we will go to speakers in Zoom, and at that time I will let you know at that point, and we'll ask you to please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And again, ask you to please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and we will let you know as we're coming up on the time. And after the speakers through the Zoom link, we will also have it through telephone as well, and we will inform the participants to raise your hand, and we will unmute you as we go along. So with that, we're going to take just a quick pause so that we can start gathering the questions and begin our public comment period. Thank you. Thank you. So our question today, our first question today is, I believe, from Noel. I'm not catching all the last names. So Noel, asking us to show a picture of the drawing of the proposed site enlarged. We will go ahead and do that after the conclusion of the questions and answers. And I do want to refer you as well to the website that does have that in more detail. Question from Patty: can you please share the timeline of completion for this North Lake project? As we've mentioned, this is a demonstration project, so it will be an opportunity for us to learn as we go, and to inform future projects that will come as we look to expand this from this initial 156-acre concept to larger portions of the Salton Sea. As of now, we are targeting breaking ground with some exploratory work towards the end of this calendar year. Certainly, the timing will be dependent on a number of features, including the ability to obtain right-of-way timeline, working with the property owners to do so. But our hope is to begin at least some exploratory work by the end of this year. Let me see if our panelists would like to add to that, Supervisor, or others.
Yeah, Juan, real quick, going back to Noel's ask of wanting to see, I think, a description or a map. Can we get that up there just now, just so that he can see? I think Exhibit 1 will probably be the best exhibit to show him, so that he can see and everyone else can see the 4 different alternatives. Right, we have alternative 1, which is the blue. Alternative 2, which is part of the green and blue and then goes into the actual sea itself. Alternative 3, which is the green portion, which is north of the yacht club. And then alternative 4, which I believe is around 20 miles north from the yacht club. Can we get that up? I want to make sure we take the time to address that now. And alternative 1, now mind you, all these alternatives have their pros and cons. And I'm hoping that by going to our website, you can take a look at our technical memorandum. In the technical memorandum, it provides you an introduction, and it provides you opportunities and constraints about every single one of these alternatives, specific to the water supply, as it pertains to either drain water or well water, canal water, or temporary use of canal water. It explains a little bit about environmental impacts and permitting concerns. It breaks down for you as well land ownership. Why don't you make that bigger so that they can see that? Land ownership and the right-of-ways and easements that we have to coordinate if we truly are to break ground by the end of this year, which is our goal. Issues around infrastructure, right? Issues around access, recreational activities, there you go. And then obviously costs associated with every single one of those alternatives. I thought it'd be important for us to break this down right now because this is the context in which we're talking about. And so go back to the other. There you go. So if you notice, alternative one is the blue area. And that alternative one truly consists of the yacht club. And ultimately, although all these have pros and cons, through much discussion within the Salton Sea Authority and with the state, ultimately we felt that alternative one might be the best alternative, in spite of the fact that it does have cons just like everyone else does. Every other alternative does as well. But that's because it's the closest to the yacht club. It's the closest to the North Shore community. And we wanted to make sure that the community had something that they can access. And so that's alternative one, the blue section. And then you have alternative 3, which is the green section, which is just above the alternative 1, the blue section. Then you have alternative 2, which is part of the blue area, part of the green area going into the sea itself. And then way up north by Garfield and Arthur Street, you have alternative 4, right? And so mind you, as you take a look at the website and read through the memorandum, it'll break down for you how we got to this conclusion, if you will, looking at the pros and cons of each alternative. And as far as Patty's question is concerned, you know, ultimately that is the goal, is to try to break ground by the end of this year. But the only way, honestly, that we can achieve that is if we continue to advance this effort at the state level with our colleagues and our friends and allies like we have been, and be steadfast to this. But at the same time, ensuring that we deal with all those concerns or challenges that could be before us. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, CVWD needs to agree. IID needs to agree, right? The County of Imperial needs to agree. The landowners of alternative 1 that might not be IID need to agree, right? The CEQA process and the NEPA process that eventually we have to deal with at the federal level needs to agree. There's still a lot of moving parts, which make this project difficult. But as long as we continue to advance the work on an ongoing basis, we could achieve this. And our goal is at the end of this year. And there may be others that would like to speak to this, whether that be Assemblymember or Director Estrada or Patrick or even staff.
I think you covered it well.
Thank you for your comments. Patrick,
I
go
would
ahead.
just highlight that there, you know, that your comments reflect the extensive amount of historic work that got us to this point. I did get a notice from Assistant Secretary Delgado this morning that he did sign off on the CEQA document for this project. So things are moving forward in a very positive manner.
It's a good sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor, and thank you, Patrick, for your comments. I believe that we're going to ask our technical team to read the questions out loud that are in the chat box. I think we'll be able to proceed a little bit easier that way. Thank you. Roy?
Okay. This question is, can you talk more about the horseshoe-shaped concept and specifically the purpose of the berms?
Thank you. So I'll begin, and others can join. So the purpose of the berms is to create a reservoir, if you will, that as the water is put into the North Lake, and it will have to be replenished on an annual basis, that it will not recede further, and that the berms essentially will create a reservoir, if you will, in front of the North Shore Yacht Club, and keep that lagoon in perpetuity, so that we can take the benefits both from a recreational air quality as well as a deep water habitat standpoint. So I will ask Patrick or anybody else, Supervisor, would like to chime in a little bit more to talk about the berms.
I think the question with respect to the horseshoe perhaps was dealing with the greater North Lake concept. And again, all of these things that we are developing to create a more sustainable long-term ecosystem at and around the sea are developmental. This first project will give us a lot of information that will be used to further refine future projects, whether it's a horseshoe or a lake or groups of lakes. Those things are all being advanced to address both the environmental issues, the human health and safety issues, respecting the communities at and around the sea, to introduce recreational and other cultural components that allows the communities to become, the communities of the future. But I think that was the intent of the question. It is a concept until we firm up the final plans for the future of the sea, including the work that the state is doing on a variety of different concepts and projects.
Thank you, Patrick. We're ready for our next question. Thank you. This question is from Tom. It's good to see a combined habitat and recreation project get underway at the Salton Sea. Has the 1,900, approximately 2,600 acre foot per year water supply been secured? What is the plan for management of water quality and habitat for successful environmental restoration? And how will the public be able to access the recreational opportunities? So I'll begin on that, and others will join as well. So as far as the water supply, there are discussions going on right now. We very much appreciate the partnership with CVWD to work on how the water supply will be provided. There are a number of different options that are being explored and discussed between the authority, the county, and CVWD to secure that water supply. So more information on that will be forthcoming. Environmental restoration is certainly an important part of this project. So we will be, as the project moves forward, there will be monitoring, if you will, to make sure that we're successful in our environmental restoration projects as far as both water quality and habitat. The last point of the question was how will the public be able to access the recreational opportunities? So we see opportunities to do that through this particular project, through the North Shore Yacht Club and the boat ramp that will likely need to be relocated as part of this project. Let me turn it over to our speakers to see if they want to add to any of my comments on either the water supply, the habitat and environmental restoration, or the public access for recreational opportunities.
Juan, I'll make a brief comment as it relates to water supply, and I'll just reemphasize what you said, that there are conversations happening between the Salton Sea Authority and CVWD, to an extent the county. I know that there's been a formal request submitted to CVWD by the Salton Sea Authority to initiate those conversations. I think that from a CVWD perspective, it is a question that the agency is going to begin to address with more detail. And I think we are at the beginning of those conversations. So there is more to come in the next few months. But we are aware of the request, and we'll certainly start to work with Riverside County, the Salton Sea Authority, and others to explore all the possibilities that you just mentioned, canal water, drainage, water, and ultimately come up with solutions. At least that I believe those are the efforts. But I think that's one of the things that are in the kind of near future as being resolved. Thank you.
And I would just remind the public that this is in fact a demonstration project, and that these questions are appropriate to be discussing at this time as this project moves forward. There are economic, technical, environmental, even political and financial issues that fit into each option that might be available. And the goal is to develop a project that is appropriate and sustainable. And I'm confident that working with our friends at CVWD and the county and IID and our other partners and other stakeholders, we're going to find the right answer for this project.
Thank you, Director Estrada and Patrick. Patrick, perhaps you can help with the next question as well, asking about access for kayaks.
The environmental documents and the design of the lake contemplate non-motorized recreational use. So kayaks and other non-motorized uses on the lake would be entirely appropriate.
Thank you, Patrick. We have a request from Jenny. Can you please provide links for the items you're mentioning? Thank you for that, Jenny. We will make sure we continue to update our website right after this meeting with any pertinent links. Thank you for that suggestion. Follow-up from Patty, who currently owns the land in blue, is a private county, state, all of the above. I believe it's actually a combination of private ownership. We do have a number of private parcels, as Mr. Ordonez mentioned. There are also some in public ownership. Patrick or Joseph Caldwell from Web that's on as well. Would either of you like to add more to that?
I believe that I've identified 4 separate ownership entities that relate to the project. And there's a small portion of it that does have private ownership, but the majority of it is either state or agency property. And those discussions have been ongoing for some time.
Let me provide you a little bit more background on that. And the only reason why I know this, quite frankly, is because once again, you'll be able to access this information that will provide you that background information. So one owner is USA 723. I don't know what exactly that means, but I assume it's at the federal level. And the amount of acreage that they own specific to this alternative is around 66 acres. Another falls under Home Pride Financial Incorporated. I don't know who that is, but that's only 1.42 acres. The bulk of it falls under IID, and that is around 75 acres. And then you have an individual, I believe by the last name of Splitter, I guess, and it's about 1 acre. And so this document that you'll have access to, if we don't have it up there already. We'll be able to provide you all the different breakdowns of who owns the territories or the lands for each alternative. So in this case here, we got 4 different owners, and with IID being the one that owns the most.
Thank you, Supervisor, so much for that great information. Next question, does Site 1 reach south as far as the Salton Sea Visitor Center and the State Park? I will initially answer that by saying it does not. This particular project, the 156 acres, is unfortunately, given the funding available, not able to quite get us that far south just yet. However, we do see that link to be able to continue to expand this with a future project and go south to the state park being a very key aspect. So then we would be able to have public access of a future project, be able to have public access from 2 locations, both the North Shore and the state park.
Who asked that question, Juan?
That is Noel, Supervisor.
Noel
Yes,
or Noel?
Noel or Noel, apologies.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question, Noel. When we first started this process, we were thinking that, and that's what we really wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that the yacht club and that this alternative was connected to the state park as much as possible. But once again, after seeing how much funding we received, and then just the amount of, and I think Director Estrada was the one who really gave us more information around that, or made us think twice, was because I think there was quite a bit of owners along the way that would have made it even much more difficult. But as Juan Perez, our CEO, mentioned, that is a goal. That is somewhere where I hope that with future funding, and obviously once we get this project moving forward, we can move in that direction, because it just makes good sense to try to do that and achieve that linkage, if you will, between the state park as well as linking that to the yacht club. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, and I'll add, Supervisor, that you're right, and again point to the memo that you've been sharing that kind of goes over the different alternatives. And I believe that the alternative, which at first we were contemplating, which connected the yacht club to the state park, we realized that it was the alternative that perhaps was one of the most complicated, as we had to deal with land access issues and easements and such. And you just described that in this scenario that we are focused on now, we have 4 different owners. I believe we said it was 8 different parcels. That other alternative, I believe, was magnitudes times more of perhaps owners and parcels. So certainly a more complicated project from that aspect, and kind of in the spirit of wanting to break ground on the project sooner than later, understanding that this is a project that is much needed, and we need to have something on the ground sooner than later. I think this is what kind of pushed us to this alternative instead.
And I would add to that, the authority is pursuing resources to expand the study of the relationship between the state park and this project. There was some previous work done by a firm called KDI, funded by, I believe it was the Mountains Conservancy, I could be wrong on that did some work at the state park. But these 2 projects do have a relationship, and the more we can develop them, understanding that relationship, I think the more the community and the region will benefit.
Thank you all for your comments. And to add to that, and I think Director Estrada mentioned it in his comments, by continuing to expand the footprint further south, we would have had a very significant increase in the number of parcels that would have to be acquired from private ownership. So although there are clearly benefits, and we want to address that as a next phase of a project, given the desire to get something on the ground now and not being protracted and further complicated right-of-way acquisition, we felt it was important to move forward with the alternative one that you see. Next question, and I'm going to ask Joseph Caldwell-Webb to address this. I think the supervisor may want to add to this as well. This is from Patty. Can you please share the main pros and cons of the alternative one?
If I can share my screen, in the technical memorandum that's attached or linked up on the website, we have a summary. The last table in the memorandum has all the alternatives, and it kind of gives a summary of what we looked at. We looked at it from a bunch of different, and all the alternatives from a bunch of different standpoints, and kind of gave the pros and cons, how many properties they impacted, what was our water supply options, how much offsite infrastructure did we have to construct to make that alternative viable? Do we have good access to it? Is it going to be easy for community members to get to? How many recreational opportunities would there be? And then, how much is it going to cost? So we kind of looked at all of those things, and we ranked, or not ranked, but just kind of gave a summary of what was the pros and cons of each alternative. So you can look at table 13. If you download it, you can look at it and read the report in more detail, but this gives a summary of what we felt was very good pros on this. Was we had good recreational opportunities, good access, good parking lot. The North Shore Yacht Club is right there. So a lot of the amenities that are already out there, we could just piggyback upon those. And some of the cons are there's going to be some offsite infrastructure that we need to construct to get the water there. And, the environmental is always kind of the wild card, but that was kind of a wild card on everyone. So in general, that was the pros and cons we looked at.
Thank you for that, Joseph. I don't know if any of the panelists would like to add more, but I will mention that certainly the benefits to the North Shore area specifically, and looking at the ability to use the facilities that we have there at the Yacht Club, and the ability to really create a hub there for this particular initial project, also weighed into the consideration. The next question is from Tuna Fish. What is the plan to keep the lake full? And second, will there be any desalination of water? So the plan to keep the lake full, and I'll ask others to add to my comments, but certainly we are working, as Director Estrada mentioned, with CBWD and others and the supervisor to secure a stable long-term water supply. We recognize that there will be needed ongoing replenishment due to evaporation, seepage, other factors, and it's important that we secure a long-term supply. As far as desalination of water, I think that remains to be explored, and maybe Patrick can speak to that further. I will mention that as not just this project, but other projects in the future are expanded, certainly because of the topography of where other areas there may be. There may also be opportunities, and there may be some on this project, to capture some of the drainage runoff, and perhaps blend that water as well. So Patrick or Director Estrada or Supervisor, you'd like to add to any of my comments?
I know I sound like a broken record when I say it, but this is a demonstration project. and there are a lot of options and alternatives to explore. The questioner highlights a critical component of it that we are taking very seriously. Water conservation is and will continue to be important in California. And as this and future projects more fully develop, how those water resources get developed into the future may involve some form of cleaning of that water, whether it directly relates to this project or not. That hasn't been determined yet, but it certainly could be a repository for water treated from the natural flows from the Coachella Valley as a long-term supply. But again, the opportunities before us are developmental and to some degree exciting. Near term, though, we have to deal with the reality of what we have and work with what we have, get this project in the ground, and then start using it as a tool in the toolbox to ensure water security for our region and beyond.
I'll add, Patrick, that that in the short term, I think you're correct in the statement that I don't think we're at this point looking to desalinate water. I think what we're trying to do is come up with the right blend of water that might be available to try to capture a particular water quality that we're looking for. And again, depending on what supplies are available and how many or how much is available, is going to really give us a sense of what we can do moving forward with other projects. So you're right. It is important to emphasize that this is a pilot project that is going to continue to inform what options we have and how much of different options we have, if it's canal water or drainage water or well water, all those things certainly are being explored.
Thank you, Patrick and Director Estrada. We have a question from Joan. What range of depths are likely? I'll ask perhaps Joseph from Webb to speak to that a little bit more. As was presented, the berms conceptually, we anticipate to be somewhere between 10 to 15 feet high. Of course, there would have to be some level of freeboard above the water line. Joseph or Patrick, anything you want to add to that?
It's going to vary, but there will be deep water habitat, which we kind of hear deep water, we think really deep, but it's usually deep water is about 6 feet or deeper. It's deep enough so birds can't dive down in there and get fish and stuff like that out, and some of the species that are sensitive. So there will be deep water habitat as part of this. So we're going to be 6 to 10 feet, maybe 12 feet deep. And it's not going to be super deep, but that's going to be the range from 0 to about 12 feet deep.
Thank you, Joseph. There's a question from Pam. Is access to the lake going to be free to the public? I will ask Patrick to speak to that as well. I know that the recreational components and whether there's some level of user fee, as you see in facilities, park facilities, will have to be considered further. But Patrick, is there anything else you want to add to that?
That's a good question, and one that we've discussed at a high level, but not really drilled down on. The goal would be to make this a community asset, whether that's free or affordable, or how that works out is going to be a conversation between the state, between the county, and the park district who's currently operating or the future operator, to see what it takes to operate the facility and how to meet those obligations. But at the end of the day, what everyone involved in the project is aspiring to is a project that the community can benefit from. Free is certainly the right target, but under any circumstance, it has to be usable, and in order for it to be usable, it has to be affordable, whatever that means. My goal would be that it, at least with respect to the people of the community, that it would be free, but that decision has not yet been made.
That would be the goal. It should be free. But obviously, you mentioned we have to deal with all that. We're not there yet, to be honest with you, whoever raised that question. I actually haven't even thought about that, but nonetheless, though, we make this happen, man. I would love to make sure that the community has access, whether they can pay for it or not.
Thank you, Supervisor and Patrick. We're going to switch momentarily to take a few questions that have been submitted through the Spanish chat as well. So I'll ask Douglas to read the question in English and Spanish. Douglas, you'll translate. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. So we have received a couple questions in Spanish. The first one is from Conchita Posar. Hemos recibido preguntas en español, entonces ahorita las voy a decir en español, después en inglés y voy a traducir. La primera pregunta es, ¿cuándo es la próxima reunión? The first question is, when is the next meeting? So I will actually go ahead and answer that. So this is the very first meeting. We do have planned in about 2 or 3 months another meeting. However, you will be notified if you follow the RivCo Now social media page, or if you can just take a look at our website. As soon as we determine when the next meeting will be, it will be uploaded on our website. Followed by Supervisor Perez's office will also be sending out in his district newsletter for any upcoming meetings. Entonces, si quiere saber la próxima reunión, va a ser como unos 2 a 3 meses, pero ahorita no tenemos una fecha. Si nos puede seguir en el sitio, ahí vamos a poner cuándo es la próxima reunión. The second question from Conchita is, ¿qué tipo de vegetación tendremos? What type of vegetation do we have in the area? So now I want to pass it on to our staff members if they want to unmute themselves and answer that question.
Thank you for that. Joseph, let me ask you if you have anything you can share, or more specifically as to the type of vegetation at this point. Clearly, that's going to be closely looked at as part of the design of the project once we bring an engineer on board.
We've not gone into great detail on the vegetation. I mean, there is sparse vegetation out there currently, a lot of, sagebrush, or I'm not a biologist by any means, but part of the contract and part of the proposal that we want the selected consultant to bring in is a recommendation of what would work, what won't work, because we want something that's sustainable. We want a project that will last and be a great amenity and not just a maintenance nightmare. So that is one thing we are absolutely looking at as part of this project.
Thank you for that, Joseph. I did want to also add to Mr. Ordonez's comments as well as far as notifications for any future meetings. We provided, Douglas has provided his email, and that's going to be made available through the presentation on the website. And we encourage any of you that want to make sure that we notify you expressly of any future meetings to just let Douglas know, and we'll generate an interest list that we can send out for any future meetings. Let me turn it back over to Douglas for another question in Spanish.
Thank you, Juan. The final question from Conchita Posar is, who will maintain the lake? In Spanish, ¿quién será responsable por el lago? Turn it over to staff.
Great, thank you, Douglas. And thank you, Conchita. That is a matter that is going to be the subject of discussions between the county and the state and the Salton Sea Authority. We've had a number of discussions on that topic, but certainly there's more work to be done in that area. I'll ask Patrick if he would like to add any more comments to that.
I think that was a fair response, Juan. It's a good question, one that is certainly top of mind for everybody who's working on this project. It has many facets to it, and parsing out the costs and benefits and and methods of payment for it is going to take a little bit of work. But it's the right question to ask, and it's something that everybody on the team is involved with, and we will come up with the right answer.
Thank you, Patrick. The next question is from Ed. Can you please elaborate on what factors would be essential in order to guarantee your express term perpetuity? Thank you. And I think that's in reference to the water. So as I mentioned, and other speakers have mentioned, the water source and the specifics of the water source and the long-term plan for continuity of that, which is certainly critically important to this project, is the subject of discussions, active discussions, and of our active partnership between the county and CVWD and the state and others. So I'll see if any of our other panelists would like to add to that.
I would say that it's a question not unique to this project. I think it's a question to all of the projects at and around the sea, now developed and being developed in the future, which is why, as a demonstration project, that question is forcing that issue to the front so that we can evaluate the various options for a source of supplies that can be sustainable, so that our grandkids and their grandkids can enjoy the benefit of our hard work today.
Thank you, Patrick. This is a comment or question from Dan. I know we have to start somewhere, but this strikes me as a potentially patchwork approach when given the magnitude of the issue problem of the Salton Sea. We're focusing on this tree. Let's not forget the forest. We are focusing on a needed project, but let's not forget that we need a holistic solution. And Dan, very much appreciate your comments, and I know our panelists will want to add to that as well. And they're well founded and well taken. And it's important once again to highlight that this project is so important in so many different ways, not only to create a standalone project that can be delivered fairly quickly, schedule-wise, compared to other more significant widespread approaches, but this will lead to a project that we can see under construction here soon, that will lead to an ongoing benefit to the North Shore area, and to also stress the points that Patrick has been making, that because it is a demonstration project, it will provide a lot of information that the partners can then use when we look to expand and build future projects and replicate that in other portions of the Salton Sea. Would any of our speakers like to add to that?
Yeah, Assemblymember is like.
I'm sorry, Patrick?
The assembly member wants to make a comment. He's trying to unmute. There he is.
Yes, to Dan Dam, or like whoever asked that question, I have to respectfully disagree. This effort is part of the 10-year Salton Sea Management Plan. This is a comprehensive approach. What we're doing with this particular project is taking a lot of unknowns and being bold with ensuring that communities within proximity to the Salton Sea can also benefit from the secured money from the state of California to ensure that we're addressing the immediate public health threats of air quality issues, eco-habitat issues. And sorry that you feel like there's a disconnect, or for that matter, the project doesn't seem complete, but this is part of a comprehensive approach, a 10-year Salton Sea Management Plan that the state of California is saying, let's identify projects within proximity of populations to the sea to make sure that we can make right and be right with the communities that have been waiting to see Salton Sea improvements. That includes Desert Shores and West Shores. And we know that there's a major construction underway with the $200+ million investment happening on the south end. And we want to see the similar type of investment happening all around the Salton Sea. So thank you for the question, but I'm going to be the first one to respond and say that I have to respectfully disagree. And I applaud the efforts of our supervisor, the county, and all of its partners, and appreciate the questions coming from the community who live in and around the Salton Sea, who are really concerned about the public health threats. And I did want to touch on a question that was asked earlier about maintenance and operation of all these projects. One of the things that the state is very much interested in, if this lithium opportunity gets off the ground on the south end of the Salton Sea, is that the recovery fee of any mineral, in this case lithium, or a franchise tax fee that could be applied to the recovery of lithium, that the state of California is looking at that opportunity as a way of investing into operation and maintenance of a lot of these projects that will come about from the Salton Sea Management Plan. So I just wanted to touch on that as well for the question that was asked by resident Conchita from the North Shore community, and appreciate that she's looking that far out in terms of who's going to be taking care of these projects in the end run. So just wanted to address those two comments. Thank you.
Supervisor, if I may, I'll add just for context that you know, we have estimates of how much it, you know, an estimate of the cost to implement an entire perimeter lake around the sea. I think the cost that I remember for that was over $1 billion. And I know that we've also have estimates that looked at the cost for a project that would capture the entire perimeter within the Riverside County portion. I believe some of those costs were around anywhere from 200 to 400 million. And so we have to, you know, be honest about what funding we can expect, and certainly have a responsibility to show that we can manage a $20 million project with all its complexity before we jump into projects that are 100 times more complex. And so I think that's what we're doing here is we're trying to show the state and other funding agencies who we are asking for funding to implement more projects around the sea that we can resolve these issues. And hopefully as we do, we take on bigger projects or add projects, but I think we're doing it the right way. And my hopes is that we're successful, and when we are, we're going to go to Sacramento and we're going to ask for more funding, and they're going to say, well, you know what, you're able to do it. So I just wanted to share that because it is important to kind of show the steps of why we're doing this project.
Sure, and once again, mind you, this is a demonstration project, which means that we need to demonstrate to the state and to the federal government that we can accomplish this. I think ultimately, simultaneously, as we're working on this front, you know, I'm interested to see eventually what the UC Santa Cruz team comes up with when it comes to, I guess, the big picture that you're referring to, Dan, and ensuring that we're taking a holistic approach, if you will. But that's soon to come. And, you know, we can't wait for that. So how I see it is, because this is within the 10-year Salton Sea Management Plan, and it is, quite frankly, I guess, sanctioned or agreed by the state of California, we have an opportunity here to demonstrate that we can get something done here while waiting to see what these studies come up with as to what is the feasibility of water importation and all that other good stuff that people are referring to. I assume that's what you're referring to as well. And so it's a, you know, we have to live within our means, and if we had more funding, potentially we could do more, but this is where we're at now. And once again, it's a lot further than what we have been ever before. And that's unfortunate I have to say that, but that's the truth. But I appreciate your question, and quite honestly, your question as well as the questions that have been brought up by many others are the questions that we're going to bring up as well to our friends in Sacramento. Thank you.
So the assembly member is exactly right. I tend to view it more as a seed than a tree. And we're planting the seed, and we'll water that seed, and we'll cultivate and prune that seed, and we'll grow a forest from this. In last year's budget, the state approved $40 million. In this year's budget, the governor has requested $100 million. And it's only because of our strong local leadership, from the assembly member to the supervisor to Director Estrada and others who have lived and worked in this area for generations and are strongly supporting this project, that we're able to achieve the successes that we are able to do. But demonstrating our ability to perform is a critical part of the conversation, working with our partners at CNRA. The authority has been advocating back in DC for federal support, something that's been long lacking at the C. We were able in 2020 to get authorization under a piece of legislation for a study of a long-term project, which was funded this year by the Corps of Engineers. And hopefully soon the state will join in that effort as a joint local sponsor, and it will begin a 3-year study at the end of the day, which will deem a project that will result from that eligible for 65% federal match. And as Director Estrada mentioned, these projects aren't in the tens or hundreds of millions. These projects are potentially in the billions of dollars, and bringing in a federal partner with those types of resources has taken a lot of time and a lot of hard work by a lot of people, but that seed has been planted.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists for answering that so well. This is a question: will the water in the lake have any circulation? And I'll turn it over to Joseph Caldwell to see if he'd like to address that. Joseph.
Water in the lake is going to absolutely need to just not be stagnant. We want to have a healthy lake, and part of the proposal that we're having, the consultant we're bringing on, is to bring a limnologist, a lake person that designs lakes. So there's a lot of different ways that we could do that, but they're going to come up with a recommendation of how we can get the good circulation in the lake, make sure that there's enough oxygen in there, and that it's a healthy lake.
Thank you for that, Joseph. This is actually a comment more than a question from Keshav. Thank you for this, Keshav. Also, the project helps to increase community involvement, increase awareness of the importance of nature and conservation, and I certainly could not agree more. Those are all important aspects of this project. Next, this is a comment, and I'm sorry I don't have quite the speaker on here, but just FYI, children and families who participate in the science camp in the fall do not pay the entry fee. So I think that gets to the recreation question earlier. Thank you for that clarification. This next question is from Quantum Consultations. Will there be contracting opportunities announced for this project or for the future similar type projects? My proposal, Save the Coachella Valley Basin, is being reviewed for project feasibility with the independent review panel. And it's very complementary to the North Lake Pilot Project. And Quantum is letting us know that they're ready to get to work. So we appreciate the enthusiasm. The work will be publicly bid out by the county at such time as we are at that stage of that project with a final design, and it will be publicly bid to give interested parties an opportunity contractors an opportunity to bid on it. I don't know if there's anybody else that would like to add any further comments to it. This is, again, from Keshav regarding vegetation. I got this from the email from the Department of Conservation. And she's referring to a quote that the SSMP team began harvesting local seeds from around the Salton Sea in early 2021. Working with botanists, plants have been grown and tested to tolerate the salinity that is present in the region. This work is ongoing relative to the plant species and the ideal time to harvest the seeds. Planting of native seeds, of native plants grown in nursery and seeds collected in 2021 will start in March following the initial phase of work. So appreciate you shedding some light and providing information. I know our state partners can certainly speak to this further as well in future meetings on vegetation and the aspects of that. Next question. Apologies while I read it. This can't tell who the question is from, but it's a comment as well. I'll be frank. What will prevent IID from unilaterally destroying this project like they did to the Red Hill Bay Restoration Project after millions were spent by partner agencies and the project was nearly finished? I'll ask Patrick to perhaps speak to that point.
Sure, I'm happy to. I'm not intimately involved with the complexities of Red Hill Bay, but I know that there are many facets to that, and each party involved with that have their understanding of the facts and issues. And so it wouldn't be fair for me to comment on that particular situation, other than to say I think it's, people are working in good faith to resolve it. As it relates to work of the authority, working in conjunction with the state and our federal partners, IID has been our partner at the authority since 1993. In the same vein that I fully anticipate cooperation and participation from CVWD or the tribe, and they've never flexed in providing that. I'm confident that IID will be a strong partner in implementing this and other solutions. I think we all have much to gain by implementing successful projects around the sea. It's just refining the concerns of each individual party. Each member of the authority and each local entity is a special interest unto themselves, and we have to respect the particularized needs of each special interest. That's the only way we can get something done. But when we can understand the commonality, those things in the middle that we can all agree on, we can get a lot done. And this one project, we haven't finalized the issues with IID, but we've been in conversation with them for a long time. And I personally do not expect to have any problems in getting this done with IID's full-throated support.
Thank you for that, Patrick. Next question from Noel. Do you envision that there could be swimming in the lagoon area in addition to non-motorized recreational vehicles? Patrick, you were speaking a little bit earlier about the access. Would you like to elaborate more at this point?
That would be the hope. And I think that's going to be informed by the water quality that ultimately we will be able to achieve in the North Lake. And that the reason we did what we did and the reason we're pursuing the strategies that we're pursuing is with that as a high value, and we are hopeful that that can be achieved. And that I wish I had a better answer, but that's the only one I have right now. At a minimum, there'd certainly be fishing, boating, kayaking, other water-related activity, and then the swimming aspect would be otherwise addressed.
Thank you for that, Patrick. We have a comment from Patricia that many people from different states as well as different countries visit the park, and thank you for your comment, Patricia. We certainly I think it speaks to the level of public outreach that we want to do, that the work that we're doing here is certainly going to be looked at, not just in our local communities, but as well as throughout the state and internationally. We appreciate that. We have, I think, maybe one or two more questions that submitted through the chat, and then we'll move to speakers in Zoom in just a few minutes. And again, just as a reminder, once we move to the Zoom speakers, speakers will have 3 minutes. If you can please raise your hand, and you will be acknowledged by our technical team assisting with this. This is a final, I think, final question or comment in respect to, in respect to an earlier question asked by Dan. I don't believe efforts relating to the Salton Sea, given that it's a public health crisis, should be done for the purposes of doing something bold. We need to focus on long-term plans that will improve lives rather than doing harm. Is this project guaranteed to bring forth greater plans to restore the entire Salton Sea rather than sections? So I know speakers have touched on that, and they may want to add to that as well already. But as we have noted, the work that we're doing here is very much needed in order to be able to not just create this specific project, but to be able to provide us with information that would be so critical for future projects as well. So I don't know if any of our speakers would like to add any more to that. Okay, thank you. With that, I believe that we're ready to see if there are any questions submitted through Zoom. Do we have any questions? Not at this time. Okay. Well, as we, I believe that's going to conclude our community input portion.
Hey, Juan, I
do see a hand.
I see a hand raised by Ed Luna.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. I'm sorry.
No problem.
I think we'll unmute Mr. Luna. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Ed, go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
How's that work? Thanks very much. And, I really want to thank you guys for everything that you've done, you continue to do, and you propose to do in the future. It's what you might say, it's a great vision that you all demonstrate. And as I speak, I think what a great dialogue, because good dialogues just seem to, foster more questions as a result of the discussion. And as we're talking here, I'm recalling my history as a parent, raising children and putting them to school and helping them with their various science projects at different grade levels that they had to put it. And I thought to myself, yeah, this is what Mr. O'Dowd must be referring to in terms of a demonstration project. You've got a hypothesis and you start working towards your results or something like that. So I appreciate that. But I've noticed his background, on his screen. I said, well, my gosh, we've got a berm right behind him. We've got a little lake in front of the North Shore Beach and Yacht Club. And I'm saying, using a scientific approach now, a more adult level, isn't there a possibility that we could try that lake, that existing surrounded area, for example, using that berm, it's already there, and closing it off further, and try to make a small scale model of what your proposal is at a fraction of the cost of this demonstration. And then, like I said, using thoroughly measured and controlled methodologies, going along with a scientific process, that is. And then once you take your data, you gather data as you go along, and you extrapolate whatever your viable or your usable data could be, and then make your projections that would bring you closer to your summary analysis, if you will, on a greater or further developed project. Would that make any sense at all, or has that already been discussed and proven unworkable? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luna, for your question, and I'll make a few comments and then perhaps turn it over to other panelists as well. So as to and I think your overall point is, you know, as we even go about building this particular demonstration project, how will we be able to come up with the best designs in order for it to be successful? And that may also involve some initial work where we're looking at different concepts, studying different types of berms. We're in the process of bringing on engineering firm to help us with a lot of the details involved in your question, and to make sure that we can get by the time that we're ready to put a project out to construction, to the most beneficial project possible, the one that's the most sustainable as well, and is able to be able to inform future decisions moving forward. I don't know if there's any of the other panelists would like to add any further to those comments.
Yeah, it's a fair question. But anybody who's been to the sea knows one thing about it: it's big, right? So the scale of this project in comparison to the whole sea is fairly small. And as Mr. Perez mentioned, this is an informed exercise that is going to evaluate a number of different design options and come up with an appropriate recommendation. And so I think that was a good question. What is the right scale for a demonstration project for work that involves 150 miles of shoreline that could potentially need that scope and scale of future development? And this is what has been deemed to be appropriate for this project at this time. A lot of thinking has gone into that, but I appreciate the question.
Thank you for that, Patrick. We'll take our next speaker through Zoom.
Nelda, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Thank you everyone for being able to host this virtual meeting. And just to start off, would like to share that I think there is a need to have a timeline for this project, even if it is a pilot demonstration project. It is necessary to stay on your trajectory toward a completion date, and for holding yourselves accountable to your timeline, and for community to hold you accountable towards completing this pilot project. There's a project long awaited for by the community, and they want to be able to see a target progress on top of being kept up to date with actual progress. Additionally, I'm really glad to see that you were able to go into more depth about the renderings of the project. So thank you, Supervisor Perez, for really listening to that request and going over that in the meeting. Even though the rendering is available online, please be mindful that not everyone may be able to have access to the online resources. And along the lines of the website, I do have a couple questions. Are the materials, the contents on the website available in other languages and languages aside from English? The website, please consider having the website and the contents in Spanish and Purépecha, since there is a large presence of residents in North Shore that are Purépecha speaking, and so it would be really, I think it would be really beneficial to the project, to the community, to be able to contact an interpreter, translator that can make online materials and even these meetings accessible to these community residents. And please keep in mind that keep in mind that language is accessible to the community, such as in closing gaps in technical knowledge. And lastly, the project should set targets for healthy air and water quality to be included in the project. especially since dust mitigation is one of the target goals emphasized in the project description. And the community does want to see the concerns and impacts around the exposed dust bed of the Salton Sea to receding shoreline. They do want to see that concern and solutions addressed in this project. Whether this is done by using the reservoir or to cover the exposed dust bed, exposed playa, or through a vegetation project, healthy air and water quality targets ought to be included as part of the public health element of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel, for your questions and comments. I did want to point out that the project website and the county site is available in both English and Spanish. And to your point, we will make sure that we can provide information in both languages. So thank you for that. Very much appreciate it. Any further comments from any of our panelists on the issues raised?
Not at this point, Juan. I think we got 2 more questions.
Thank you, Supervisor. So let's move on to our next question.
Patty Lil Gutierrez, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me know if I cut off. The internet is a little bit unstable. But good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patricia Lel Gutierrez, or Pati. Really appreciate having this virtual meeting, specifically touching on this, very awaited project, or at least a project that has been discussed in the past, but not much information has been provided. So really appreciate just having this space provided to the community. I have a question, a follow-up question, and then a comment, specifically as it relates to this demonstration project. Knowing that agricultural runoff water has historically been dumped into the Salton Sea, right, for many decades, and also even just till this day, it continues to go into the Salton Sea. What are the plans to not only do an analysis of the soil, specifically through an agricultural pesticide lens, but also potentially being able to clean this soil, knowing that a long-range outcome that you all are looking at is making these spaces recreational. So really thinking about the public health component, and maybe this is a question for Joseph, or as you all continue into the engineering phase, or even the planning and the engineering phase, I think this component is really crucial. And then also just uplifting the comment by Nilda in regards to the timeline. I do think that it's very helpful when a timeline is provided, even if they are, dates subject to change or whatnot. But I think it gives the public an overview of what is the intended timeline for this specific project. And then my comment is that I know at the beginning of this meeting, Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia mentioned that this could also be a space to raise lithium questions or comments. My request would be, and I understand that there is a Lithium Valley Commission space where there has been one community meeting back in November of last year. My request today or suggestion would be for Eduardo Garcia, if you can host multiple town halls in the next 2 months, specifically focusing on lithium. I feel that there's a lot of information, good information that has been developed over the last couple of months, but also just a lot of questions that continue to be unanswered, and a lot of great ideas coming from community members. So I think having a separate space where it really just focuses on lithium and comes from your office specifically is the recommendation moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. We appreciate your comments, and I did want to address a timeline issue that you've and Noel have brought up. We are going to be, as we continue to progress through the detailed design, we are going to be creating a timeline that we can place on there on the website and inform the public. Certainly, there are many factors that ultimately will affect the timeline of the project, such as the time involved in obtaining properties needed for the project. But your points are understood and well taken, and we will be providing updated timelines in the future. Thank you. Next speaker.
Chris Cockcroft, please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
We
Go
can
ahead.
hear you.
Okay, hey, I wanted to bring up a new paper that's just been published by Jenny E. Ross about the carbon sequestration at the Salton Sea. I don't know if you guys have seen that yet. I want to say that lowering the lake bed will cause a great deal of greenhouse gases to be put into the air in perpetuity. And given that the governor is emphasizing, diminution of greenhouse gases, I don't really understand. I think you guys should take a look at that and see how it impacts the perimeter lake concept in general, and specifically your project. Also, I think that when push comes to shove, she showed that that filling the lake is really the only answer to carbon sequestration. So I just wonder if you have any thoughts about that and how it relates to your project. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments on that. I'm not sure if any of the panelists have any specific information we can provide at this time on that issue, but that is something that we can certainly consider further and discuss further at upcoming meetings as we get more into the details, designs of the project. We have
Chris,
one.
I haven't had a chance to read through that. I'll take a look at that. I'll see if I can find it and review it. And there's no reason why we can't understand that better and maybe figure out a way as to how we can integrate into that integrate that into the conversations as we're having them with State of California.
Thank you, Supervisor. We have one final question, and then after this question, I'll ask our panelists to see if they have any closing comments they would like to make. Next, final question, please.
Tom, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to hear your responses and get a view of the project. I'm hopeful that it will be successful in providing habitat and recreation benefits for the community. 2 questions. One, what kind of fish species are you expecting to support in this habitat? Are you intending to intentionally put particular species in, or just see what takes hold? And if you're intending to put in a particular species, what are you thinking of stocking this lake with in terms of fish that would be helpful in bringing birds like pelicans and cormorants and so forth back to the area? And the other part of the question, or the other question I'd like to have answered is, I do understand that you see this as a potential element in a future perimeter lake. And if in fact that is true, how will the berm design be worked out to integrate it with a larger perimeter lake, should that someday get funded in the 1.5 billion or higher cost that's been estimated for such a project? Thank you.
I'll add a comment to that. And I'll start off by saying that, at least from a personal standpoint, I don't think that the Salton Sea Authority is a environmental, wildlife agency. So my hopes is that direction we would get from Fish and Wildlife or others that could inform us as to what type of wildlife we should have at the lake. I think at least that's my inclination, is that other folks would participate with us to try to come up with what works best there from an environmental, fish and wildlife perspective. My understanding also, as it relates to your last question, is that our engineers that have been helping with this, Joseph, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've shared preliminary designs for the ultimate perimeter lake, at least from some elevation standpoint. That I think we tried to make sure that that this pilot project could fit into that if we ever needed to continue with more lake along the perimeter.
I'll touch on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
I think it's safe to say that whatever species of fish ultimately ends up in the lake is going to be intentional. I don't think we're going to allow it to happen accidentally, but it's going to be informed by the water quality and also based on input from as was pointed out by Director Estrada, the people who are most specialized in that field. So I think that's where that will land. And how it fits into the perimeter lake is to be determined. Just because of the scale of it, this is a relatively small part of it, so it'll either fit in or not fit in, but it's part of it, whether it's part of the design or it's integrated into a perimeter lake or whatever the concept ultimately that rises to the top as a result of the work that the state's doing on the long range plan, and the authority has the work that the authority has previously done in the perimeter lake, and by the core study, the feasibility study that the federal government will undertake. At the end of the day, this will inform that work, and it will be in some fashion integrated into that plan. The relationship is to be determined, though.
Thank you, Patrick. We appreciate that. We're going to close the minute here shortly, and I'll call on each of our panelists to see if they have any final observations or closing thoughts. But before we do that, I just wanted to express my appreciation to all of our panelists that have participated today, and everyone, every member of the public. We've had tremendous participation today. Thank you so much for your interest, engagement, and so many great comments and questions today. Patrick, any final closing thoughts from you?
I've already recognized and thanked our local electeds, and would reiterate that. Only thing I would say, Juan, is thank you for your strong leadership, and you're a driving force behind keeping this train on the track. And everybody owes you a debt of gratitude for your strong leadership, and thank you for that.
Thank you, Patrick, for your kind comments. Director Estrada.
Yes, just want to thank everybody who was here today. I certainly appreciate the comments and the questions. I do want to thank everybody who's been involved up to this point. I think we've made tremendous progress. It certainly has not been easy. It's required a lot of effort and time. And I want to thank all our partner agencies, the state of California, everybody who's involved here locally, the community. I think we're at a good point, and we still have a lot of work ahead of us, and I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to continuing to have these meetings. Looking forward to continuing to work with all our partner agencies with the state of California to get to a finished project. And just want to thank everybody who's helped get us this far. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Assemblymember Garcia. Assemblymember, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with anyone?
You're on mute.
Where
that remote unmute component is great to make sure that no one talks more than they need to. So That is a good mechanism to keep things on track. But thank you for letting me say a few words here. I appreciate this 2-hour discussion that we've just had, as mentioned, one of many that need to take place. I believe we're moving in the right direction. For the first time in a long time, I think we can agree that the state is stepping up to fulfill its commitment. We are in a unique circumstance where the state leadership all the way to the executive office understands the responsibility that it has with addressing the Salton Sea. We've got two administrations that have adopted the legal obligation that we have to the QSA to do something about this. Now, we need to stay the course. There are dollars that are in line to continue to come in this direction, whether they be general fund dollars due to the surplus or whether they continue to be dollars coming from Prop 68. Any and every opportunity that I get when we're talking about climate and making large investments in that space, the Salton Sea, New River, AB 617, and other programs of that like will be front and center. And rest assured that that is our work and commitment. I wanted to just answer the question about lithium, and the Lithium Valley Commission is the most appropriate forum to raise those questions and concerns. And in the context that I raised lithium here was based on the concept of utilizing the monetary benefits of what happens on the south end of the sea to apply them to the maintenance and operation of projects that are built and collaboration with us here locally and in the state. And as it relates to community outreach, we are certainly committed to continuing along those lines. I've asked state agencies, I've asked the private sector, and I'm asking the community, those who raised the question, those who are here, there is an opportunity to do a series of outreach community forums that should be led by the community, that should be led by the private sector, that should be led by the state of California, and that should be led by other entities such as the local air quality district, the regional water board, and the director's office of public health at the local level, to have the conversations that I think the community want to continue to flush out prior to a report being collectively wrapped up and introduced to the legislature, which is September, October of this year. So over the next few months, I think that there will be some additional outreach meetings, and we will partner up with the state agencies to host one. But as I mentioned, I encourage the community to host one. I encourage the private sector developers to host one. And I encourage the county and those agencies at the local level to host one with very specific objectives to be discussed. And again, to allow the community to have that input that is much needed for us to get to a good conclusion. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you, Supervisor, and everyone who helped put this event together, and thank everyone who participated from the community, particularly those who live in and around the Salton Sea. So thank you, and have a good rest of your Saturday and a good weekend.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember. Really appreciate all your involvement and participation. And Supervisor, if I may turn over to you for any final thoughts and closing of the meeting, please.
Yeah, thank you once again, Juan, for facilitating this conversation, and staff, IT staff, our interpreter, everyone that was engaged at the county level to make sure that we had this virtual meeting today, as well as my staff here at the local level to help support our efforts to advance this work. And I also just want to thank our presenters, Doug, Director Estrada, our Executive Director O'Dowd, and once again, our Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia, for the good work that all of you are doing. Appreciate you. And as well, all the questions that came from the community and the community's engagement. You know, not all the boxes are checked yet, but this is our first go around. And I do anticipate as we move forward, and hopefully, God willing, once we overcome the challenges with COVID, we will continue to have these discussions on the ground in our communities so that we could have that FaceTime together. I think that's critical. I think that's important, and I welcome that. And I look forward to that. Obviously, we want to continue to hear your concerns, your ideas, and your voice to be heard, because ultimately the goal is to check all those boxes. And with that said, all the points that you're making, I want to raise them. The Assemblymember heard them today. The director, Estrada, heard them today. Salton Sea Authority heard them today. And as well, our friends at the state level heard them today. But we're going to ask those questions again, because my hope is that within the next 2 months or 3, hopefully 2, we have answers to those questions. And as well, that we have this information up on the website, and that we have them in as many languages as possible. And so that everyone can access the information, and that we do more outreach at the community level for those individuals that cannot access the internet, so that you are able to follow along and know what's going on with the Salton Sea. That is important to all of us as well. And ultimately, the importance of ensuring that we have community involvement is because we all need to walk together. And I want to make sure that as we walk together, the expectations and the accountability among us all is understood, right? And that we all have equal responsibility, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, as a policymaker, ultimately, at the end of the day, as an organizer on the ground, or as a private individual, we need to somehow get on the same page so we can walk together as we're trying to advance this North Lake Perimeter project, but at the same time, moving forward with other projects like we heard earlier, whether that be West Shores, Desert Shores, whether that be the projects in the southern end of the Salton Sea, whether that be Perimeter Lake, or whether that be after the studies from UC Santa Cruz and understanding better the water importation efforts and the holistic approach. We got to walk together. That's what's allowed us to get to this point, is that somehow, some way we're managing this, because at the federal, regional, state, regional, local level, we've been able to walk together to get us to this point. And so I want to just make sure that we manage expectations, that we're all on that same page, so that we're not pointing fingers at one another, and that we're working together as a team so that we can make sure that this project makes good sense. The questions that were brought up about the purpose of the berms, about the purpose of the horseshoe, about habitat and recreation, about access, for example, and someone brought up the access for swimming or for kayaks. Who owns the land? Ultimately, at the end of the day, how many entities are engaged with these easements, and who do we need to talk to? The issue of water quality and the issue of water quantity was brought up today as well. All these questions, all these points that were brought forward today are very, very important. And I wrote everybody's questions, whether it be from Joan, from Tuna Fish, from Noel, from Patty, from Cochita, from Ed, from Dan, from Nilda, from Chris, from Tom, and many others. I wrote them all down because these are the questions that are important to help guide us as we move forward. And so know that your points, your questions, your concerns are not going on deaf ears. We will be raising these questions moving forward. And I want to thank you all once again for joining us. And I appreciate this first conversation. I look forward to our second one. Muchas gracias a todos que nos acompañaron esta tarde y seguimos en esta lucha adelante. Thank you all once again for joining us. Take care.
That concludes our meeting. Thank you.